The gust of wind came without warning, violent, sudden, merciless. One moment, Daniel Brooks was reaching for his daughter's hand. The next, he was frozen in absolute horror, his eyes locked on something he could never unsee. His boss, Claire Monroe. The woman who controlled his career, his livelihood, his entire future, standing 20 feet away in a moment of complete vulnerability as her sundress betrayed her in the cruelest way possible. Their eyes met. Time stopped, and Daniel knew with sickening certainty that his life would never be the same. What happens when one mortifying accident collides two worlds that should never have touched? Stay until the end to discover how the most embarrassing moment of their lives became the beginning of something neither could have imagined. And comment below with your city. I want to see how far this story travels. The beach was supposed to be Daniel's sanctuary. After 57 grueling hours that week at Monroe and Associates, after nights of helping Emma with homework until his eyes burned, after dinners scraped together from whatever hadn't expired in the fridge, after bedtime stories read in a voice hoarse from exhaustion, after all of it, the beach was supposed to be his one moment of peace. 3 hours. That's all he'd asked the universe for. 3 hours with his 7-year-old daughter, away from deadlines and performance reviews, and the constant gnawing fear that one mistake would send their carefully balanced life toppling into chaos. The morning had started perfectly. Emma's delighted squeals as the waves crashed over her toes, the rare warmth of June sunshine on his shoulders, the simple pleasure of watching his daughter's joy, unfiltered and pure, reminding him why he pushed through the exhaustion, why every sacrifice mattered. Daniel had chosen this particular stretch of beach deliberately, far from the city, tucked away from the usual weekend crowds. A place where corporate executives didn't venture, where he could exist as just dad instead of Brooks from accounting, where the weight of professional hierarchy couldn't find him. He should have known better than to trust in sanctuary. "Daddy, look!" Emma's voice pulled him from the pleasant haze of semi-relaxation. "That lady has the same color hair as Miss Peterson." Daniel smiled without looking up from the sandcastle they were constructing, a lopsided affair that Emma insisted was a princess palace. "Lots of people have brown hair, sweetheart. But it's really pretty brown. Like chocolate. Can I have chocolate later?" "We'll see." The eternal parent response, buying time, preserving options. The wind had been mild all morning, a pleasant breeze that kept the heat bearable. Daniel didn't notice when it began to strengthen, didn't register the way other beachgoers glanced at the sky, noting the dark line of clouds forming on the horizon. He was too focused on Emma's architectural vision, too grateful for this sliver of normalcy in their complicated life. The gust hit like a physical blow. Daniel looked up instinctively, his father reflexes kicking in to make sure Emma wasn't caught off guard by the sudden wind. She was fine, laughing as her hair whipped around her face. But Daniel's eyes didn't stop at his daughter. They traveled past her, drawn by movement in his peripheral vision, landing on a figure about 20 feet away, a woman in a sundress who had been walking along the waterline. The wind had caught her dress with vindictive precision, lifting it in a way that defied both physics and mercy. For a fraction of a second, Daniel's brain didn't process what he was seeing. Just a woman, just an unfortunate moment, just look away and forget it happened. Then recognition slammed into him like a freight train. Claire Monroe, his boss, the vice president of operations at Monroe and Associates, the woman who signed his paychecks, the woman whose approval determined whether he kept his job or joined the unemployment line, the woman whose icy professionalism had terrified him for 3 years, the woman whose rare smiles in the office felt like presidential pardons. Claire Monroe, fighting with her sundress as the wind betrayed her in the most mortifying way possible. Their eyes met. Daniel watched, helpless, horrified, as recognition dawned in her face too. Her hands were still struggling with her dress, her face flushing a shade of crimson he'd never seen on her composed features. For one eternal second, they were both frozen in the worst possible moment, connected by mutual horror and the universe's cruel sense of timing. Then Claire conquered her dress, pressing it firmly against her legs, and Daniel whipped his head away so fast he nearly gave himself whiplash. "Daddy, what's wrong?" Emma's voice seemed impossibly loud. "Nothing, sweetie. Nothing at all." His voice came out strangled. His heart was hammering. His mind was racing. Of all the beaches, of all the days, of all the people in a city of 2 million souls, his boss. Here. Now. In the one moment she would least want any living person to witness. Daniel kept his eyes fixed rigidly on the sandcastle, seeing nothing. His hands moved mechanically, piling sand, but his thoughts were spinning into catastrophe. Monday morning, walking into the office, facing her. The conversation. Would there be a conversation, or would she just have HR call him? We're making some changes to the department structure, Daniel. Your position has been eliminated. They'd been fine with money. Not comfortable, but fine. He'd finally built up 3 months of savings. Emma's school was stable. They had health insurance, a routine, security, fragile as it was. And he'd just seen his boss's... Daniel couldn't even complete the thought without wanting to sink into the sand and disappear. That lady's coming over, Emma announced cheerfully. No. But Emma never lied, and Daniel could hear footsteps in the sand approaching with deliberate intent. Every instinct screamed at him to grab Emma and run, to pretend he'd suddenly remembered an urgent appointment, to avoid this conversation at all costs. He looked up. Claire Monroe stood 5 feet away, now wearing a long beach cover-up that hadn't been there before. Her hair, Emma was right, it was a rich chocolate brown, was pulled back in a simple ponytail, so different from the severe bun she wore to the office. Without her tailored suits and heels, she looked younger, more human. But her expression was unreadable, her posture rigid with the same authority she wielded in boardroom meetings. Daniel scrambled to his feet, nearly kicking over the sandcastle in his haste. Miss Monroe, I'm so sorry. I didn't realize you'd be... He was babbling. He never babbled. I should have looked away faster. I did look away. The wind, I'm really... Mr. Brooks. Her voice cut through his panic with surgical precision, the same tone she used when reviewing quarterly reports. Please stop talking. Daniel's mouth clicked shut. His career was over. 3 years of perfect performance reviews meaningless. He'd need to update his resume, start job hunting, figure out how to explain the gap in employment, whether he could afford their apartment on unemployment benefits. I'm sorry, he managed one more time, quieter. For what? Claire's eyebrow arched. For existing in a public space? For being subjected to nature's poor timing? She glanced at Emma, who was watching the adults with curious eyes, then back at Daniel. I'm not angry, Mr. Brooks. I'm mortified, which is entirely different. The question is whether we can both agree that what just happened didn't happen. Daniel blinked. That was not the response he'd expected. Yes, absolutely. Didn't happen. Already forgotten. Good. Claire's shoulders relaxed microscopically. Then we can both continue enjoying our Saturday and never speak of this again. She turned to leave. You have pretty hair, Emma piped up. Claire stopped, turned back. For the first time since approaching them, her expression shifted, surprise flickering across features that had been locked in professional composure. Thank you, she said carefully. Daddy says it's rude to comment on people's appearances without permission, Emma continued, undeterred by Daniel's attempt to telepathically will her into silence. But you're really close to us, so I think that means it's okay, because it's not like I'm shouting across the beach. That would be rude. Despite everything, the mortification, the fear, the certainty of professional disaster, Daniel felt a hysterical laugh bubbling up in his chest. This was his life. His boss had just experienced the most embarrassing moment possible, and his 7-year-old was now giving her a lesson in etiquette. Emma, he managed, maybe Ms. Monroe wants to... Your logic is sound, Claire interrupted, and there was something in her voice that almost sounded like amusement. She looked at Emma with what might have been the beginning of a smile. What's your name? Emma Catherine Brooks. I'm 7 3/4. We're building a princess palace, but it keeps falling down because the sand is too dry. Daddy says we need to use wet sand, but I like the way dry sand feels better, so we're compromising. She pronounced the last word carefully, clearly proud of using it correctly. Compromise is an important skill, Claire said. She crouched down, actually crouched in the sand, to Emma's eye level. May I make a suggestion? Emma nodded eagerly. Use dry sand for the base, where you want it to be tall and impressive, but use wet sand for the details, the walls, the towers, the decorative elements. That way you get the best of both approaches. That's really smart. Emma looked at Daniel. Daddy, can we try it that way? Daniel was staring at his boss, his intimidating, terrifyingly competent boss, kneeling in the sand discussing sandcastle architecture with his daughter. The wind was still gusting intermittently, but the earlier violence had passed. The sky was darkening, though, storm clouds rolling in with ominous intent. Sure, sweetie, he heard himself say. Will you help? Emma asked Claire with the boundless optimism of childhood, where adult strangers were just friends you hadn't properly met yet. Claire glanced at Daniel, and for a moment he saw something raw in her expression. Not anger, not embarrassment, something lonelier, something that looked almost like longing. If your father doesn't mind, she said carefully. Daniel knew the right answer, the professional answer, the answer that maintained appropriate boundaries between boss and employee, that acknowledged the hierarchy, that recognized this was his personal time with his daughter. He looked at Claire's face, really looked, past the authority and the power, and saw a woman who'd been walking alone on a beach on a Saturday morning. We'd be glad for the help, he said. For the next 40 minutes, as storm clouds gathered and the wind picked up, Daniel Brooks and Claire Monroe built a sandcastle with a 7-year-old girl. Emma directed the operation with the confidence of a seasoned foreman, assigning tasks and offering praise liberally. Ms. Monroe, you're really good at the towers. Daddy, yours are kind of lumpy. It's okay, though. Lumpy is good sometimes. Thank you for that ringing endorsement, Daniel muttered, but he was smiling. He couldn't help it. Emma's joy was infectious, and there was something surreal and wonderful about this moment, this bizarre, impossible moment where the carefully constructed walls of his professional life had completely dissolved. Claire worked with surprising intensity, her fingers shaping wet sand with precision. I haven't done this since I was a child, she said quietly, more to herself than to anyone else. Did you build sandcastles a lot? Emma asked. Every summer. My parents had a house on the coast. We'd spend July there, and I'd spend hours on the beach. Claire's voice had gone soft with memory. I took it very seriously, kept trying to build the perfect castle, never quite managed it. Why not? Emma scooted closer, genuinely interested. Because perfect doesn't exist. I didn't learn that until much later. Claire glanced at Daniel, and something passed between them, an understanding, perhaps, of the weight of trying to be perfect, trying to hold everything together, trying never to let the cracks show. I think lumpy is better than perfect anyway, Emma declared. More character. Your daughter, Claire said to Daniel, is remarkably wise. She gets it from her mother. The words were out before Daniel could stop them, and he felt his chest tighten. He didn't talk about Sarah. Not often, not casually. But something about this moment, this strange bubble of honesty on a darkening beach, had loosened his usual careful control. Claire didn't pry, didn't ask the questions that were probably visible in her eyes. She just nodded once and went back to shaping a tower. The first raindrops fell as they were putting the finishing touches on what Emma insisted on calling the best princess palace in the whole world. But we should get to the car, Daniel said, already moving to gather their things. Emma's face fell. But we just finished. I know, sweetheart, but take a picture, Claire interrupted. She pulled out her phone. Before the rain washes it away, she should have something to remember this. Daniel hesitated, then nodded. Claire stepped back and took several photos while Emma posed proudly beside their creation. Then impulsively, Emma grabbed both adults' hands and pulled them into the frame. All of us, we all built it. Daniel found himself standing beside Claire, both of them damp with sea spray and covered in sand, with Emma beaming between them. Claire held out her phone at arm's length and clicked. I'll send it to you, she said, then paused. Actually, I suppose I have your email. Work email. Is that appropriate? The question hung in the air, laden with the strangeness of their situation. They were boss and employee. They just shared something completely outside those parameters. What were the rules here? It's a picture of a sandcastle, Daniel said finally. I think that falls under appropriate. The rain was falling harder now. Emma shrieked with delight as the drops intensified, spinning in circles with her arms outstretched. We really need to go, Daniel said, reaching for his daughter. Mr. Brooks. Claire's voice stopped him. She looked at him directly, her expression serious. What happened earlier, with the wind? I meant what I said. It didn't happen. I won't hold it against you. Your job is not in jeopardy because of an accident of nature. Relief flooded through Daniel so powerfully he felt lightheaded. Thank you, Thank you. However, Claire's lips curved into something that might have been a smile. I would appreciate it if this... She gestured at the beach, the sandcastle, the entire surreal situation also didn't happen at the office. I value my privacy. I'm sure you understand. Completely. Daniel grabbed his daughter's hand as she danced past him. Emma, say goodbye to Ms. Monroe. Goodbye, Ms. Monroe. Thank you for helping with the palace. Emma waved enthusiastically. Goodbye, Emma. It was a pleasure meeting you. Claire's voice had gone soft again. They ran for the parking lot as the rain turned into a downpour. Daniel glanced back once and saw Claire still standing there watching them go, looking smaller somehow without her corporate armor, alone on a beach as a storm rolled in. Monday morning arrived with the weight of inevitability. Daniel had spent the weekend oscillating between relief and anxiety. She'd said his job was safe. She'd been kind even, but what if she'd reconsidered? What if the embarrassment festered over the weekend and transformed into anger? What if seeing him in the office brought back the memory she wanted to forget? He dressed with extra care, his shirts ironed to crisp perfection, his tie knotted precisely. Armor of his own. Emma had talked about nothing but the nice lady at the beach all weekend. Can we see her again? Is she your friend? Can she come over for dinner? She's my boss, sweetheart. That's not how it works. Why not? Because there were rules, hierarchies, appropriate boundaries between personal and professional lives. Because bosses didn't build sandcastles with their employees' children. Because whatever had happened on that beach existed in some strange liminal space that couldn't survive contact with the real world. Daniel had tried to explain this to his 7-year-old and failed miserably. The office was exactly as he'd left it Friday afternoon. His desk was still cluttered with reports. His coffee mug still had a faint ring from his last cup. The fluorescent lights hummed with their usual monotonous drone. Everything was normal. Except Daniel couldn't shake the feeling that something fundamental had shifted. He saw her only once that morning, a glimpse through the glass walls of the conference room as she led a meeting. Claire Monroe, perfectly professional in a charcoal suit, her hair in its severe bun, wielding authority with the same casual precision she always had. No hint of the woman who'd knelt in the sand talking about compromise in childhood summers. It didn't happen, Daniel reminded himself. Saturday didn't happen. But when he checked his email at lunch, there was a message from her. Subject line, Saturday. His heart stopped. He clicked it open. The email contained only one thing, the photo from the beach. The three of them standing beside the sandcastle, Emma's delighted face between two adults who were both smiling, genuinely smiling, in a way that looked nothing like professional courtesy. Below the image, a single line. She was right. Lumpy is better than perfect. CM Daniel stared at the photo for a long moment. Then he saved it to his personal drive, filed the email in a folder labeled Important, and went back to work. The week passed. Daniel buried himself in quarterly reports and budget projections. Claire remained professional, distant, exactly the boss she'd always been. Their interactions were limited to necessary communications about projects and deadlines. It didn't happen. But on Friday, when Daniel was gathering his things to leave, eager to get home to Emma, to start the weekend, to leave the office behind, he found a note on his desk. It was handwritten on Claire's personal stationery, her penmanship precise and elegant. Mr. Brooks, I wanted to thank you for last Saturday. It reminded me of something I'd forgotten, that sometimes the best moments are the ones we never plan for. Your daughter is delightful, and you should be very proud. I also wanted to apologize if I made the situation more awkward by approaching you. I could have simply walked away, let us both pretend we'd never seen each other, but I found I didn't want to. In that moment, you weren't my employee, and I wasn't your supervisor. We were just two people on a beach caught in an embarrassing situation, and your kindness in not fleeing immediately was appreciated. I know we must maintain professional boundaries. I respect that, and I value my privacy. But I also wanted you to know that what happened, both the embarrassing part and the sandcastle part, won't change how I view your work or your value to this company. You're an excellent analyst, and that has nothing to do with coincidental Saturday beach visits. Thank you for your discretion, and thank you for sharing your daughter's wisdom. I've been thinking about that all week. Lumpy is better than perfect. Perhaps I needed to hear that more than I realized. Regards, Claire Monroe. Daniel read the note 3 times. Then he folded it carefully and slipped it into his wallet, where it rested against Emma's school photo, and headed home to start the weekend. He didn't know what to make of the note. Didn't know what Claire Monroe, his boss, his superior, the woman who controlled his professional fate, was really trying to say. But as he drove home through Friday evening traffic, he found himself hoping, in a quiet corner of his heart that usually didn't dare to hope for anything beyond stability and survival, that maybe Saturday hadn't been as impossible as he'd thought. Maybe, just maybe, some moments were too real to pretend away. Even the lumpy, imperfect ones. Especially those. The note stayed in Daniel's wallet for 3 weeks, growing softer at the creases where he'd folded it, the ink fading slightly where his thumb had traced over the words during quiet moments when Emma was occupied and his mind wandered to places it probably shouldn't go. Nothing changed at the office. Claire remained the consummate professional, efficient, demanding, fair, but distant. Their interactions continued in the same vein they always had: project updates, deadline confirmations, the occasional nod of approval when Daniel's analysis proved particularly insightful. She never mentioned the beach, never acknowledged the note. It was as if their agreement to pretend Saturday hadn't happened had been so successful that even the acknowledgement of Saturday had ceased to exist. Daniel told himself this was exactly what he wanted: clean boundaries, professional distance, no complications in the carefully balanced ecosystem of his life. But Emma asked about the nice beach lady at least once a week, and every time she did, Daniel felt something twist in his chest that had nothing to do with professional boundaries. "Can we go back to that beach?" Emma asked one evening as Daniel was helping her with a math worksheet. "Maybe the lady will be there again." "That beach is pretty far away, sweetheart, and I don't think the lady goes there very often." "But she was nice, and she understood about the sandcastle. You never understand about my sandcastles." Emma's tone wasn't accusatory, just matter-of-fact, the brutal honesty of childhood that cut deeper than any deliberate cruelty. "I try to understand." "I know, Daddy, but trying isn't the same as understanding. The lady understood without trying." Daniel had no response to that. He simply kissed the top of Emma's head and returned his attention to fractions, pretending the observation hadn't lodged itself somewhere deep in his thoughts. The 4th week after the beach, everything changed. It started with an email sent company-wide on a Tuesday morning. Claire Monroe was implementing new policies regarding work-life balance and employee well-being. Flexible scheduling for parents, remote work options, expanded personal days, a complete overhaul of the company's approach to what she called sustainable productivity. The office buzzed with speculation. Monroe and Associates had always been successful precisely because of its demanding culture, its expectation of total commitment. People whispered in break rooms and behind closed doors. What had prompted this sudden shift? Had Claire Monroe gone soft? Was the company in trouble? Daniel read the email 3 times, his coffee growing cold beside his keyboard. He recognized something in the language, in the carefully chosen words about balance and the illusion of perfection and the importance of being fully present in the moments that mattered. He thought about a 7-year-old girl explaining compromise, about wet sand and dry sand, about lumpy being better than perfect. He didn't let himself believe Claire's policy changes had anything to do with a Saturday morning on a beach. That would be narcissistic, self-aggrandizing, ridiculous. But he saved the email anyway. The real change came 2 days later when Daniel's direct supervisor, Margaret Chen, called him into her office with an expression he couldn't quite read. "Brooks, I'll be direct. Ms. Monroe specifically requested that you be assigned to a new project. It's high profile, high pressure, and honestly, it's usually reserved for senior analysts with more tenure. Margaret leaned back in her chair, studying him. Your work has always been solid, but this is unexpected. Any idea why she'd single you out? Daniel's mind raced. The beach. The note. The photograph he'd looked at more times than he cared to admit. Had he done something to make Claire think he expected special treatment? Had his professionalism slipped without him realizing it? No idea, he said carefully. Well, she wants you on the Riverside development analysis. It's a major acquisition, lots of moving parts, and she'll be overseeing it personally. You'll be working directly with her, reporting to her, presenting to her. That's a big opportunity, Brooks. Don't waste it. Direct reporting, working closely, personal oversight, all the things Daniel had been carefully avoiding even thinking about for 4 weeks. When do I start? Today. She wants to meet with you at 2 to go over the parameters. Daniel returned to his desk in a daze. His hands were steady as he organized his files, prepared his notes, reviewed everything he knew about commercial real estate acquisitions. But his thoughts were chaos. Was this a test? A way of ensuring he understood the boundaries? Or was it something else entirely? Something he didn't dare name? At 1:55, he stood outside Claire's office, his heart hammering against his ribs in a way that felt disturbingly similar to how it had felt on the beach when he'd first recognized her. Come in, Mr. Brooks. Her voice carried through the partially open door before he could knock. Claire's office was exactly what he'd expected, meticulously organized, decorated with restrained elegance, every surface clear except for the essentials. She sat behind her desk, her posture perfect, her expression unreadable. The woman who'd knelt in the sand discussing sandcastle architecture might as well have been a figment of his imagination. Sit. She gestured to the chair across from her. I assume Margaret briefed you on the Riverside project? Yes, ma'am. Don't call me ma'am. Miss Monroe is fine. She pulled up a file on her computer and Daniel noticed for the first time that there were faint shadows under her eyes, as if she hadn't been sleeping well. This acquisition is complex. Multiple stakeholders, significant capital investment, and considerable risk if we miscalculate. I need someone detail-oriented, thorough, and capable of thinking beyond the obvious data points. Margaret tells me that's you. I appreciate the confidence. This isn't about confidence, Mr. Brooks. This is about competence. Claire's eyes met his directly, and Daniel felt the full force of her attention like a physical thing. I don't give opportunities based on sentiment. I give them based on capability. Your analysis of the Hartwick merger last quarter was excellent. You identified issues 3 senior analysts missed. That's why you're here. The Hartwick merger. Professional recognition. Nothing to do with beaches or sandcastles or moments of vulnerability. Daniel felt relief and something else he didn't want to examine too closely. Something that might have been disappointment. I won't let you down. I know you won't, because if you do, I'll remove you from the project without hesitation. Claire's expression softened microscopically. I hold everyone to the same standard, Mr. Brooks, including myself, especially myself. This project is too important for anything less than excellence. For the next hour, they discussed the Riverside development in minute detail. Claire was brilliant, incisive, strategic, 3 steps ahead of every potential complication. Daniel had always known she was good at her job, but seeing her mind work up close was like watching a master craftsman shape raw material into art. She didn't just understand the numbers, she understood the story behind them, the human elements that data could only hint at. You're frowning, Claire observed. Do you disagree with my assessment? No, Daniel hesitated, then decided honesty was less dangerous than evasion. I'm just trying to keep up. The way you connect different data streams, it's remarkable. It's pattern recognition. Anyone can learn it with enough practice. But there was something pleased in her voice, something almost vulnerable. Most people don't bother. They see numbers as separate from people, as if financial decisions don't have human consequences. But you don't see them that way. No, I don't. Claire closed her laptop. Every decision we make here affects real people. Employees, families, communities. That's not something I take lightly. Daniel thought about the new policies, the flexible scheduling, the remote work options. Is that what prompted the changes, the new work-life balance initiatives? Claire's expression shuddered immediately, walls slamming back into place. Those changes are based on extensive research showing that sustainable productivity yields better long-term results than burnout culture. It's good business, Mr. Brooks. Nothing more. But her voice had gone tight, defensive, and Daniel recognized the tone. It was the same one he used when people asked about Emma's mother, when casual questions brushed too close to things that hurt. Of course, he said quietly. Good business. The tension in Claire's shoulders eased slightly. We'll meet 3 times a week to review your progress, Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays at 2. I expect detailed reports and clear reasoning for all conclusions. Questions? Just one. Why me, really? Claire looked at him for a long moment. Because I think you understand something most people here don't. That numbers tell stories, and those stories matter. That doing good work isn't just about profit margins. It's about doing right by the people affected by our decisions. That balance isn't weakness, it's wisdom. She paused. Was I wrong? No, Daniel said. You weren't wrong. Then we'll work well together. You're dismissed, Mr. Brooks. Daniel stood, gathered his notes, and was almost to the door when Claire spoke again. How is Emma? He turned. Claire hadn't moved, but something in her posture had changed, the rigid professionalism cracking just enough to let something else show through. She's good. She's been asking about you, actually, about the nice beach lady. I'm hardly nice. That's not what Emma thinks. She's an excellent judge of character. Claire smiled, actually smiled, the first genuine expression Daniel had seen from her since entering the office. She told me lumpy was better than perfect. Best professional advice I've received in years. I'm glad it helped. It did. More than I expected. Claire's smile faded, replaced by something more complicated. I meant what I said in my note, Mr. Brooks, about that Saturday, reminding me of things I'd forgotten. I've been thinking about that a great deal lately. Daniel's heart was doing that hammering thing again. Me too. That's probably not wise. Probably not. The silence stretched between them, heavy with things neither could say. Finally, Claire turned back to her computer, her fingers poised over the keyboard, dismissing him without words. Daniel left, closing the door softly behind him, and spent the rest of the afternoon staring at spreadsheets without seeing them, his mind replaying Claire's smile, her question about Emma, the way she'd said his name when she wasn't hiding behind professional distance. This was dangerous territory. He knew that. Claire was his boss. Their lives were fundamentally incompatible. She moved in circles he couldn't enter, made decisions that affected hundreds of lives, wielded power he could barely comprehend. He was a single father scrambling to keep his head above water, making peanut butter sandwiches and helping with homework and trying desperately not to screw up the one precious thing in his life that mattered. But when he got home that evening and Emma asked if he'd seen the nice beach lady, Daniel heard himself say, "Actually, I did. We're working on a project together." Really? Emma's face lit up. Is she still nice? Can I meet her again? Can she come for dinner? She's still nice, but dinner isn't... That's not something we can do, sweetheart. Why not? Because she's my boss. There are rules about these things. Emma considered this with the serious concentration she brought to all important matters. Rules are important, but sometimes rules are wrong. Miss Peterson told us that in school. She said some rules used to say people couldn't be friends just because they looked different, and those rules were bad rules that needed to be changed. That's true, but so maybe your rule is a bad rule. Maybe it's okay for bosses and workers to be friends. Maybe the rules should change. Emma, it's more complicated than... You always say things are complicated when you don't want to talk about them. Emma crossed her arms, channeling indignation with the devastating accuracy only children possess. But the beach lady understands about sandcastles. And you're always sad, Daddy. You try to hide it, but I can tell. Maybe if you had more friends who understand things, you wouldn't be sad so much. Daniel felt something crack in his chest. I'm not sad, sweetheart. Yes, you are. It's okay. I get sad about Mommy too. But you're sad about lots of things, not just Mommy. Sad about work and money and whether I'm okay. And the beach lady made you smile different. Not your pretend smile, your real smile. How did children do this? How did they see through every defense, every careful construction, Every wall built to protect them from adult complications? You're too smart for your own good, Daniel said, pulling Emma into a hug. I know. Miss Peterson says I'm precocious. That means smart in a way that's sometimes annoying. It's never annoying. You're perfect exactly as you are. Nobody's perfect, Daddy. Lumpy is better, remember? Daniel laughed despite himself, despite the ache in his chest, despite everything. Yeah, kiddo, Lumpy is better. That night, after Emma was asleep, Daniel sat at his kitchen table with his laptop, reviewing files for the Riverside project. But his concentration was fractured, his thoughts drifting to Claire's office, to the moment when she'd asked about Emma, to the smile that had transformed her entire face. His phone buzzed, an email notification. He almost ignored it. It was nearly midnight, and work emails could wait until morning. But something made him check. Claire Monroe. No subject line. Mr. Brooks, I'm reviewing the preliminary data you sent earlier, and I have some questions. Rather than wait until our Monday meeting, could you call me? I know it's late, but this can't wait if we're going to stay on schedule. My direct line, 555-0147-CM. Daniel stared at the email. Called his boss at midnight? That was unusual. Unprecedented, actually. Claire was demanding, but never unreasonable about after-hours contact. She'd been one of the driving forces behind the new policies limiting evening and weekend work communications, but she'd said it couldn't wait. He dialed before he could overthink it. She answered on the second ring. Mr. Brooks, thank you for calling. You said you had questions about the data? There was a pause. Then, that was partially true. Daniel's heart skipped. Partially? I did review your preliminary data. It's excellent, by the way. Thorough, insightful, exactly what I needed. Another pause. But that's not why I asked you to call. Ms. Monroe, Claire, when it's midnight and we're not in the office, you can call me Claire. The intimacy of her first name felt dangerous. Claire, if this isn't about work, then it is about work, in a way. She sounded tired, more tired than Daniel had ever heard her. I've been sitting here trying to figure out the appropriate way to have this conversation, and I've realized there isn't one. So I'm just going to be direct, which is generally my preferred approach anyway. Daniel waited, his grip tightening on the phone. That Saturday on the beach. I told you we should pretend it didn't happen. I believe that was the right approach. Maintain boundaries, preserve professionalism, keep our lives separate. And then I wrote you that note, which violated those boundaries even as I was insisting they existed. I've been contradicting myself for 4 weeks, and it's making me question my judgment in ways that are uncomfortable. I understand, Daniel said quietly. I've been doing the same thing. Have you? Claire's voice softened. That's oddly reassuring. I thought perhaps I was the only one being ridiculous. You're not. I saved your note. I look at the picture from the beach more often than I should. I tell myself it's because Emma likes it, but that's only partly true. The words were spilling out now, truth he'd been holding back for weeks. I think about that morning constantly, not just the embarrassing part, though yes, that too, but the after, the sandcastle, the way you talked to Emma, the person you were when you weren't being the vice president. And who was I being? Someone real, someone who looked like maybe she understood what it's like to keep all the pieces balanced, to try to be perfect when perfect doesn't exist. Daniel took a breath. Someone who looked lonely. The silence on the other end stretched so long Daniel thought the call had dropped. Then Claire spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. I am lonely, Mr. Brooks. I've been lonely for a very long time. I've told myself it was the price of success, the natural consequence of choosing career over personal connections. I've built a life that looks impressive on paper and feels empty most of the time. She paused. And then I met your daughter, who told me Lumpy was better than perfect, and I couldn't stop thinking about all the things I've sacrificed in pursuit of something that doesn't exist, all the moments I've missed because I was too busy being excellent. Claire, I'm not telling you this because I expect anything. You work for me. You're a single father with responsibilities I can't even imagine. Our lives don't fit together in any reasonable way. I know all of this. But Emma asked you today if I was still nice, and you said yes, and I realized I wanted you to think I was nice. I wanted your daughter to think I was nice. I wanted... Her voice broke slightly. I wanted to matter to someone in a way that had nothing to do with quarterly earnings or strategic planning. Daniel's throat was tight. You do matter. Emma hasn't stopped talking about you, and I... He stopped, unsure how to finish, unsure what he was even trying to say. You what? I think about you more than is appropriate, more than is wise. I tell myself it's just gratitude for the note, for being kind to Emma, for the job opportunity. But that's not the whole truth. The whole truth is that I saw you that morning, really saw you, and I haven't been able to stop seeing you since. The silence that followed was different this time, charged, full of possibilities neither of them had dared voice until now. This is impossible, Claire said finally. You understand that, don't you? I'm your supervisor. There are protocols, ethics policies, potential conflicts of interest. Even if we both wanted whatever this is, it would be complicated beyond measure. I know. It could jeopardize your job, your stability, everything you've worked for. I would never let it affect your employment, but others might not see it that way. The risk is enormous. I know that too. And Emma, she's your priority, as she should be. Any complication in your life affects her. That's not something to take lightly. I never take anything lightly when it comes to Emma. Then you understand why this conversation, however honest, can't go anywhere. Why we need to go back to pretending Saturday didn't happen. Why professional boundaries exist for good reasons. Claire's voice had regained some of its usual firmness, but Daniel could hear the effort it took. I should never have called you tonight. It was inappropriate and unfair to burden you with my personal struggles. It wasn't a burden. Daniel, the use of his first name stopped them both. Claire hadn't said his given name before. It sounded different in her voice. Intimate, weighted with meaning. This isn't just about us. It's about doing what's right, what's responsible, what protects everyone involved. You're right, Daniel said, even as everything in him wanted to argue. You're absolutely right. Then we'll agree, here and now, to maintain appropriate professional boundaries, to work together effectively without letting personal feelings interfere, to protect what matters most, your daughter's well-being, your career stability, the integrity of the project. Agreed. Good. That's settled then. Claire's voice was back to business, cool and controlled. I'll see you Monday at 2 for our scheduled meeting. Have a good weekend, Mr. Brooks. You too, Ms. Monroe. Daniel ended the call and sat in his dark kitchen for a long time, the phone still in his hand, feeling like he'd just agreed to something both absolutely necessary and absolutely wrong. The weekend passed in a blur of normal activities: Emma's soccer game, grocery shopping, laundry, homework, help. Daniel went through the motions, smiled when appropriate, made pancakes on Saturday morning, and told Emma stories at bedtime. But part of his mind was always elsewhere, replaying Claire's voice, her confession of loneliness, the way she'd said his name with such careful restraint. Monday arrived with its usual relentless punctuality. Daniel dressed with extra care, his armor firmly in place. He would be professional, appropriate, unaffected by midnight phone calls and whispered truths. The morning passed in meetings and spreadsheets and the 1,000 small tasks that filled his days. At 1:55, he gathered his files and headed to Claire's office, his heart rate elevated in a way that had nothing to do with professional anxiety. She was on the phone when he arrived, waving him in absently. Daniel sat and waited, watching her navigate what was clearly a difficult conversation with someone on the other end. Her expression was controlled, but he could see the tension in her jaw, the way her free hand curled into a fist on her desk. I understand your concerns, Robert, but the answer is still no. My personal life is not up for discussion or company vote. She listened for a moment, her eyes narrowing. That's quite enough. This conversation is over. She hung up with more force than necessary, then took a long breath before turning to Daniel. Apologies for that. Where were we? Everything okay? The question was out before Daniel could stop it, crossing the professional line they'd just reinforced. Claire's expression flickered, surprise, then something softer. That was my father. He's also the company founder, which he believes gives him the right to comment on every aspect of my life. He's convinced I'm making a mistake with the new policies, too soft, bad for business, a sign I'm losing my edge. She smiled without humor. He's been saying some version of that my entire career. For what it's worth, I think the new policies are the smartest thing the company's done in years. That is worth something, actually. Claire's smile turned genuine. More than you might think. Now, shall we discuss Riverside, or would you like to continue this ill-advised personal conversation? Riverside sounds safer. Then let's be safe. For now. They dove into the project, and Daniel was reminded again of why Claire had risen so high so fast. She was brilliant, incisive and strategic, yes, but also intuitive in ways that went beyond data. She asked questions that revealed assumptions, challenged conclusions that seemed obvious, pushed him to think deeper and broader than he'd thought possible. 2 hours vanished in what felt like minutes. When Claire finally glanced at the clock and swore softly, Daniel was startled to realize it was after 4. I have a board meeting in 15 minutes, and I haven't eaten since breakfast. She rubbed her eyes, looking suddenly exhausted. This is going well, though. Better than well. Your insights on the community impact analysis were exactly what I needed. Thank you. That means... Daniel stopped himself from saying something too revealing. I'm glad it's useful. Claire looked at him with an expression he couldn't quite read. You do that a lot. Start to say something, then stop yourself, as if you're constantly editing your own thoughts. Doesn't everyone? Not to that degree. It's like watching someone navigate a minefield, carefully measuring every step. She stood, smoothing her skirt. I do the same thing, you know. Every word calculated, every response weighed for potential consequences. It's exhausting. Yes, Daniel said quietly. It is. They stood there in her office, the desk between them, both recognizing something in each other that went beyond professional respect. Two people who'd learned to guard themselves carefully, to hide their struggles behind competence, to pretend perfection was possible when they both knew it wasn't. I should go, Daniel said. You should. Claire didn't move. But before you do, Emma, is she well? Happy? The question, so unexpected and so clearly genuine, made Daniel's chest tight. She is. She asks about you, though. She wants to know when she can see you again. Tell her, Claire paused, seeming to wrestle with herself. Tell her the beach lady thinks about her, too. That she's right about Lumpy being better than perfect. That she's a remarkable child and you're a remarkable father. I can't tell her that. Why not? Because she'll ask why you don't come visit if you think about her. And I won't have a good answer, not one that makes sense to a 7-year-old. Daniel picked up his files. We're doing the right thing, keeping boundaries. I know that. But Emma doesn't understand about office politics and conflicts of interest. She just knows she liked you, and she doesn't understand why that's not enough. Claire's eyes were bright, suspiciously so. Neither do I, if I'm honest. It should be enough. Liking someone, connecting with them, seeing something in them that feels real when so much feels manufactured. That should be enough. But it's not. No, it's not. Daniel nodded and walked to the door. His hand was on the handle when Claire spoke one more time. Daniel? He turned. She was still standing behind her desk, perfectly professional in her perfect suit, with her perfect posture and perfect control. But her eyes held something raw and real and utterly imperfect. Thank you for the midnight call, for being honest, for not making me feel foolish for admitting things I shouldn't have admitted. You could never be foolish, Daniel said. Lonely, maybe. Human, certainly, but never foolish. He left before she could respond, before he could say anything else that crossed lines, before the careful architecture of appropriate boundaries could crumble any further. But as he walked back to his desk, past colleagues immersed in their own work dramas, past the normal functioning of office life, Daniel thought about Emma's question. Why couldn't bosses and workers be friends? Why were the rules the way they were? And he thought about Claire standing alone in her office, fighting with her father, navigating board meetings, making decisions that affected hundreds of lives while eating nothing since breakfast and maintaining perfect professional composure through it all. Maybe the rules were wrong. Maybe they were bad rules that needed changing, as Emma had said. Or maybe they were exactly right, protecting people from complications that could destroy carefully balanced lives. Daniel didn't know. But he was starting to suspect that knowing didn't matter nearly as much as what he was going to do about it. The answer came 3 weeks later, though not in any way Daniel could have anticipated. He'd fallen into a rhythm with Claire, professional, productive, carefully maintained at exactly the right distance. Their Monday, Wednesday, and Friday meetings continued like clockwork. They discussed data, debated strategies, refined analyses. Claire pushed him intellectually in ways that were exhilarating and exhausting in equal measure. Daniel produced his best work, fueled by the desire to meet her exacting standards, and by something else he didn't examine too closely. They didn't talk about the midnight phone call, didn't acknowledge the things they'd confessed. It was as if that conversation had happened in some alternate reality that didn't touch their daylight hours. But sometimes, in the middle of reviewing a spreadsheet or discussing market trends, Daniel would catch Claire looking at him with an expression that had nothing to do with quarterly projections. And sometimes, when she was explaining something particularly complex, he'd watch the animation in her face and forget entirely what she was saying. These moments passed quickly, both of them snapping back to professionalism with practiced ease. But they accumulated, building weight like snow on a roof, and Daniel wondered how much strain the structure could take before something gave way. Emma continued asking about Claire. Her questions had evolved from simple inquiries to something more pointed, as if she could sense her father's internal struggle even when he tried to hide it. "You talk about work a lot more now," Emma observed one evening during dinner. "And you smile when you do it. That's different." "I'm working on an interesting project." "With the beach lady?" "With Miss Monroe, yes." "So the beach lady. It's weird that you call her Miss Monroe when you know her real name. It's like calling me that child instead of Emma." Daniel set down his fork. "It's a respect thing, sweetheart. In professional settings, we use formal names." "But you're not in a professional setting right now. You're eating mac and cheese with me. That's not professional. That's dinner." Emma took a deliberate bite, maintaining eye contact with the intensity only children can pull off. "I think you like her." "Of course I like her. She's a good boss." "Not like her like her. Like her, like when Tommy Johnson likes Melissa Harris and gets all weird when she's around. That kind of like." "Emma." "It's okay if you do, Daddy. I like her too. She was nice and pretty, and she understood about sandcastles. Those are good qualities." Emma's expression turned serious. "Miss Peterson says when you like someone, you should tell them, because life is short, and people need to know they matter." "Miss Peterson is teaching you a lot of interesting philosophy. She says I ask good questions, so she gives me good answers. That's how learning works." Emma pushed her mac and cheese around her plate. "Do you think Mommy would want you to be happy?" The question hit Daniel like a physical blow. They rarely talked about Sarah directly. The pain was still too raw, even 3 years later. Emma had been only 4 when cancer had taken her mother, young enough that her memories were already fading into impressions and photographs. "I think," Daniel said carefully, "that your mother would want both of us to be happy. She loved us very much." "Then why don't you let yourself be happy? You work really hard and take care of me really good, but you never do things for you, never see friends, never go anywhere fun, never like anyone." Emma's eyes were bright with tears. "I want you to be happy, Daddy, not just pretend happy, real happy." Daniel moved around the table and pulled his daughter into his arms, feeling her small body shake with emotion. "I am happy, sweetheart. I have you. That's everything I need. But I won't always be here. Someday I'll grow up and go to college and have my own life. And then you'll be all alone, and that's scary." Emma pulled back to look at him. The beach lady was alone too, I could tell. Maybe you could both be less alone together. Out of the mouths of children came either profound wisdom or devastating simplicity. Daniel had never been sure which. But as he held Emma and promised her he wasn't going to be alone forever, that he'd try to be more than pretend happy, he felt something shift in his chest. A decision forming, dangerous and terrifying, and somehow inevitable. The next morning, Daniel arrived at work to find the office in chaos. People clustered in break rooms and hallways, voices low and urgent. Margaret Chen looked grim, her usual composure fractured. "What's going on?" Daniel asked. "Board meeting went nuclear last night. Robert Monroe, Claire's father, tried to force a vote removing her from the VP position. Said she'd gone soft, was implementing policies that would destroy profitability, that she'd lost her edge." Margaret lowered her voice. She fought back, presented data showing that the new policies have actually improved productivity and reduced turnover costs. It was brutal from what I heard. Father and daughter tearing into each other in front of the entire board. What happened? She won. Barely. The board voted to keep her, but it was close enough to be humiliating. And Robert made it clear this isn't over. He's going to be watching every decision, every quarter, waiting for her to fail. Margaret shook her head. I've never seen Claire rattled, but she looked shaken when she left last night. Really shaken. Daniel felt ice in his stomach. Is she in today? Her office has been dark all morning. No one knows where she is. Daniel spent the morning trying to focus on work and failing spectacularly. His mind kept returning to Claire standing alone in that boardroom, defending policies she'd implemented based on lessons learned from a 7-year-old on a beach, fighting her own father, nearly losing everything she'd built. He thought about her confession of loneliness, about exhaustion, about sacrificing everything in pursuit of perfection that didn't exist. At noon, he made a decision that was either brave or incredibly stupid. He drove to Claire's apartment. He'd never been there, had only known the address from the company directory. It was in one of the city's most expensive buildings, all glass and steel and intimidating luxury. The doorman looked at Daniel's rumpled shirt and skeptical expression. I'm here to see Claire Monroe, Daniel said, trying to sound more confident than he felt. Miss Monroe isn't receiving visitors. I work with her. It's important. I have strict instructions. Tell her it's Daniel Brooks. Tell her Emma wants to know if she's okay. The doorman's expression softened slightly at the mention of a child. He picked up a phone, spoke quietly, then hung up with visible surprise. 32nd floor. She says you have 10 minutes. The elevator ride felt like ascending to another world. The building was beautiful but sterile, all expensive surfaces and careful design with no personality. Daniel wondered what it felt like to come home to this every day, this beautiful emptiness. Claire opened the door before he could knock. She looked nothing like the woman he saw at work. Her hair was down, falling past her shoulders in waves. She wore jeans and an old sweater, her feet bare, her face free of makeup. Without her armor, she looked younger and older at the same time, younger in features, older in the exhaustion written across every line of her body. You shouldn't be here, she said, but she stepped aside to let him in. The apartment was exactly what Daniel expected and nothing like it at the same time. Expensive furniture, stunning views, impeccable taste, but also books stacked on every surface, a blanket crumpled on the couch as if she'd been sleeping there, a mug of cold coffee on the table. Signs of life in the careful perfection. I heard about the board meeting, Daniel said. Of course you did. Office gossip travels at light speed. Claire moved to the window, staring out at the city below. I won. I should feel victorious. Instead, I feel like I barely survived a firing squad. Margaret said you presented data supporting the new policies. I did. Productivity is up 8%, turnover is down 12%. Employee satisfaction scores have improved across every metric. The policies are working exactly as intended. Claire's voice was flat, emotionless. My father doesn't care. He doesn't see people as people. He sees them as assets to be maximized, costs to be minimized. The idea that treating people with dignity and respect might actually improve business outcomes is incomprehensible to him. But you proved it. I proved it to the board. I can't prove it to him. He's already decided I'm weak, that I've lost my edge, that I'm destroying everything he built. She turned to face Daniel, and he was startled to see tears on her cheeks. Do you know what he said to me? After the vote, in front of everyone? He said, I don't know what happened to you, Claire, but the daughter I raised would never have made decisions based on sentiment. He's wrong. Is he? Claire wiped at her tears angrily. Maybe I have gone soft. Maybe building a sandcastle with a child I barely knew broke something in me. Maybe I looked at your life, the way you love Emma, the sacrifices you make, the way you show up every day exhausted but present, and realized I've been so busy being excellent that I forgot to be human. Daniel crossed the room, closing the distance between them. You didn't forget. You just buried it under ambition and expectations and your father's impossible standards. But it was always there, Claire. I saw it that morning on the beach. Emma saw it. It's the best part of you. The best part of me nearly lost my position, nearly destroyed my credibility, nearly proved my father right about me being too emotional, too soft, too female to handle real power. She laughed bitterly. Do you know how many women have made it to my level in this industry? How many sacrifices it took? How many times I had to be twice as good just to be considered half as competent? And one morning on a beach with a child talking about sandcastles, and I'm ready to throw it all away. You're not throwing anything away. You're making it better, stronger, more sustainable. Daniel reached out, then hesitated, his hand hovering in the space between them. Emma asked me last night if I thought her mother would want me to be happy. It's the same question I'm asking you now. Do you think the woman you were before the beach, the one who sacrificed everything, who measured worth in quarterly earnings, who was lonely and exhausted and perfect, do you think she was happy? Claire stared at him, her eyes still bright with tears. No, she was miserable, but she was successful, and sometimes that has to be enough. It doesn't, though. It never is. Daniel's hand finally made contact, his fingers gentle on her arm. You can be both, successful and human, excellent and vulnerable, strong and kind. They're not mutually exclusive. You make it sound simple. It's not simple. It's terrifying. But it's possible. You proved that with the board, you showed them data, made the business case, demonstrated that compassion and profit aren't enemies. You won, Claire. You actually won. Then why does it feel like I lost everything? Because you're standing alone in this beautiful apartment, crying, with no one to tell you that you're remarkable, that what you did took courage most people don't possess, that your father is wrong, and you're not weak, you're brave. Daniel's thumb traced small circles on her arm, a gesture of comfort that felt simultaneously natural and dangerous. Emma wanted me to check on you, to make sure the beach lady was okay, so I'm asking, are you okay? Claire let out a sound that was half laugh, half sob. That child is going to be remarkable when she grows up. She already has more emotional intelligence than most adults. That wasn't an answer. No, I'm not okay. I'm scared and angry and so tired I can barely think straight. I want to quit. I want to prove my father wrong. I want to go back to that beach and build sandcastles and not care about quarterly earnings or board votes or being perfect. She looked up at Daniel, her eyes searching his face. And I want you to stop being so careful with me. Stop maintaining professional boundaries. Stop pretending you came here just because Emma was worried. Daniel's heart was hammering. Claire, tell me the truth. Why are you really here? The question hung between them, loaded with everything they'd been dancing around for weeks. Daniel could feel the weight of it, the potential consequences, the risk to everything he'd carefully built. He thought about Emma's words, about Sarah, who'd loved him enough to want him happy, about Claire standing in her apartment, alone and exhausted, asking for honesty in a life that demanded careful performance. Because I couldn't stand the thought of you going through this alone, Daniel said quietly. Because when I heard what happened, all I could think about was getting to you, making sure you were okay, being here, even if I had no right to be here. He took a breath. Because Emma's not the only one who likes you. And I'm not talking about like her in a professional respect way. I'm talking about the kind of like that makes me check my phone constantly, hoping for your emails. That makes me replay our conversations when I should be sleeping. That makes me drive across the city in the middle of a workday to stand in your apartment and risk everything just to see if you're okay. Claire's breath caught. Daniel, I know all the reasons this is impossible. I know about protocols and ethics policies and conflicts of interest. I know I'm your employee and you're my boss, and our lives don't fit together in any reasonable way. I know Emma comes first, always, and I can't risk anything that might hurt her. Daniel's voice was steady, despite the fear coursing through him. But I also know that I've spent 3 years surviving instead of living, going through motions, being a good father while forgetting to be a whole person. And then I met you on a beach in the most mortifying moment possible, and you didn't fire me or humiliate me. You built a sandcastle with my daughter and reminded me what it feels like to connect with someone who sees the world the way I do. You're saying this now, here, when everything is falling apart? I'm saying it because everything is falling apart. Because if I learned anything from losing Sarah, it's that time is precious, And moments matter, and sometimes you have to be brave enough to say true things even when they're terrifying. Daniel's hand moved from her arm to her face, cupping her cheek gently. I'm saying it because you asked for the truth, and the truth is that I care about you a lot, in ways that are completely inappropriate and absolutely real. Claire closed her eyes, leaning into his touch. This is such a bad idea. Probably the worst. It could destroy your career. Mine too, if anyone decided to make an issue of it. The board is already looking for reasons to question my judgment. I know. And Emma, if this goes wrong, if we try and fail, she'll be caught in the middle. She already cares about me. That's a huge responsibility. I know that too. Claire opened her eyes. Then why are we even considering this? Because lumpy is better than perfect. Because loneliness is a slow death, and we're both dying by inches pretending we don't need human connection. Because your father is wrong. Caring about people doesn't make you weak. It makes you strong enough to fight for something beyond profit margins and quarterly earnings. Daniel's thumb traced the curve of her cheekbone. Because Emma asked me last night why I don't let myself be happy, and I didn't have a good answer. Because when I think about being happy, I think about Monday afternoons in your office talking about data analysis. I think about the way you smile when you're not performing for anyone. I think about how you knelt in the sand and took my daughter seriously when most adults would have dismissed her. You're making this very difficult to resist. Good. I don't want you to resist. I want you to be brave with me. Take a risk. See what happens when we stop pretending. Claire's hands came up to rest against his chest, and Daniel could feel his heart pounding beneath her palms. I haven't done this in years. Haven't let anyone close. Haven't wanted to. I've built my entire life around control and certainty and measurable outcomes. This is none of those things. No. It's messy and uncertain and probably doomed to fail in spectacular fashion. You're not selling this well. I'm being honest. That's all I have to offer. Honesty and mac and cheese dinners and a 7-year-old who will absolutely have opinions about everything. I'm a single father with no savings and a modest apartment and a life that's complicated on the best days. I can't offer you fancy dinners or trips to Europe or the kind of relationship someone at your level probably expects. But I can offer you real. I can offer you lumpy instead of perfect. I can offer you someone who sees you, not the VP, not the boss, not the woman fighting her father in boardrooms. Just Claire, who's brilliant and kind and so much stronger than she gives herself credit for. Tears were streaming down Claire's face now, but she was smiling. Emma was right. You should tell people when you like them, because life is short and people need to know they matter. So tell me, Daniel said. Do I matter? Yes. The word came out as barely a whisper. You matter so much it scares me. You and Emma both. I keep thinking about that morning on the beach, about how natural it felt to be with you, how right. And then I go back to my office and my apartment and my carefully controlled life, and it all feels hollow by comparison. Then don't go back. Not to hollow, not to carefully controlled, not to lonely. Daniel leaned closer, his forehead resting against hers. Come have mac and cheese with us. Let Emma show you her artwork and explain her complicated theories about playground politics. Let me make you laugh. Let yourself be part of something messy and imperfect and real. Your daughter is going to ask questions. She's going to be thrilled. She's been rooting for this since the beach. And work, the board, your colleagues. We'll figure it out. Carefully, professionally, with full disclosure and appropriate protocols. Daniel pulled back slightly to look at her. I'm not suggesting we be reckless, Claire. I'm suggesting we be honest. With each other, with ourselves, with anyone who needs to know. We do this right, or we don't do it at all. Claire searched his face, looking for something, doubt perhaps, or signs that he didn't understand what he was asking. Daniel let her look, keeping his expression open, letting her see all the fear and hope and determination he felt. Okay, she said finally. Okay. Okay, I'll come for mac and cheese. I'll meet Emma officially, not just accidentally on a beach. I'll try to be brave enough to see where this goes. Claire's smile was tremulous but genuine. But I need you to understand something first. I'm not good at this. At relationships, at vulnerability, at letting people see me without my armor. I'm going to be awkward and probably say the wrong things and try to control situations that can't be controlled. I'm going to struggle with the boundaries between work and personal, with maintaining professionalism while acknowledging what we are to each other. It's not going to be easy. I don't need easy. I need real. Then real is what you'll get. Lumpy, imperfect, occasionally a disaster, real. Claire took a shaky breath. When? Tonight. Come for dinner tonight. Emma will lose her mind with excitement. Fair warning. Tonight is fast. We've been dancing around this for weeks. Fast might be exactly what we need. Daniel's hands moved to her shoulders, steadying her. Unless you need more time. I don't want to push. No, tonight is good. Tonight is brave. Claire laughed, the sound watery but authentic. I have no idea what I'm doing, Daniel. This is so far outside my comfort zone I can't even see the zone anymore. That makes two of us. We'll be uncomfortable together. That's oddly romantic. I'm oddly romantic. It's one of my lesser-known qualities. Claire kissed him then, quick and soft and tasting of salt from her tears. It wasn't the kind of kiss that led anywhere. Wasn't passionate or desperate. It was a promise, a question, a beginning. When she pulled back, her eyes were clearer than they'd been when he arrived. I should warn you, she said, that I don't know how to cook mac and cheese. I don't really know how to cook anything. My kitchen is mostly decorative. Then you're in luck, because I'm an expert in simple meals made from whatever hasn't expired in the fridge. It's one of my most impressive skills. I feel very reassured. Daniel checked his watch and swore. I need to get back to work before people start asking questions. Are you coming in today? No, I'm taking the day, maybe the rest of the week. I've earned it, and the board can deal with my absence. Claire straightened her shoulders, and Daniel could see her rebuilding some of the confidence that had been shattered by her father's words. But I'll be back Monday, stronger, more certain, ready to prove him wrong about everything. You're already proving him wrong, just by being who you are. Flattery will get you everywhere, Mr. Brooks. I certainly hope so, Miss Monroe. They stood in her apartment, the afternoon light streaming through the massive windows, both aware that everything had just shifted in ways they couldn't fully predict. It was terrifying and exhilarating and completely insane. Daniel kissed her forehead and left before he could second-guess the decision, before professional caution could override personal courage, before fear could win. As he rode the elevator down, past floors of expensive apartments housing people whose lives he'd never touch, Daniel thought about Emma's question. Why couldn't bosses and workers be friends? Why were the rules the way they were? Maybe the rules existed to protect people from complications, or maybe they existed to maintain power structures that didn't serve anyone well. Maybe sometimes the rules needed to be challenged, carefully and thoughtfully, by people brave enough to believe Lumpy was better than perfect. Daniel drove back to the office with the taste of Claire's kiss still on his lips and the weight of what he'd just committed to settling in his chest. Tonight, she'd come for dinner. Tonight, Emma would get her wish. Tonight, they'd take the first real step into unknown territory. It could all fall apart. Probably would, eventually. The obstacles were real. Power dynamics, professional ethics, the complexity of blending their vastly different lives. But for the first time in 3 years, Daniel felt something besides exhaustion and careful survival. He felt hope, dangerous and fragile and absolutely real. And when he picked Emma up from school that afternoon and told her they were having a special guest for dinner, when he saw his daughter's face light up with pure joy, Daniel knew he'd made the right choice. Not the safe choice, not the carefully calculated choice, not the perfect choice, but the real one, the brave one. The lumpy, imperfect, beautifully human choice. And sometimes that was the only choice worth making. Emma's reaction was everything Daniel had hoped for, and slightly more chaotic than he'd anticipated. The beach lady is coming here? To our apartment? For dinner? Each question escalated in volume until she was practically shouting, bouncing on her toes in the school parking lot, while other parents gave them curious looks. Yes, sweetheart. So maybe we should use our indoor voice before everyone in the county knows about it. But Daddy, this is the best news ever! Emma threw her arms around his waist, squeezing tight. I told you she was nice and you liked her and it would be okay. I was right. You were right, Daniel admitted, unlocking the car. You're very smart and perceptive and I should listen to you more often. but now we need to go home and clean the apartment because it's kind of a disaster. I'll help. I'll clean my whole room. I'll clean your room too. I'll clean everything. Emma scrambled into her booster seat, still vibrating with excitement. What time is she coming? What are we having? Can I show her my art project? Do you think she likes unicorns? Should I wear my nice dress? Daniel started the car, his own nervous energy feeding off his daughter's enthusiasm. She's coming at 6. We're having spaghetti because I'm not brave enough to attempt anything more complicated. Yes, you can show her your art. I have no idea about unicorns. And you can wear whatever you want, but maybe avoid the dress with the paint stains. The paint stains add character. You always say character is important. For sandcastles, yes. For dinner dresses, maybe less so. The drive home was filled with Emma's constant stream of questions and observations, her mind racing through every possible scenario for the evening. Daniel let her talk, grateful that at least one of them was purely excited without the underlying terror of everything that could go wrong. Because there was so much that could go wrong. Claire could arrive and realize this was a mistake, that his life was too chaotic, too different from her world of expensive apartments and board meetings. Emma could say something innocent that revealed how much Daniel had been thinking about Claire. The evening could be awkward or stilted or end with everyone uncomfortable and regretful. Or it could be wonderful. That possibility scared Daniel more than failure. They spent the next 2 hours in a cleaning frenzy. Emma attacked her room with unprecedented enthusiasm, actually putting toys away instead of shoving them under her bed. Daniel tackled the kitchen, the bathroom, the living room, suddenly seeing their modest apartment through Claire's eyes. The furniture was worn but comfortable. The walls were decorated with Emma's artwork rather than expensive prints. Everything was clean but clearly lived in, clearly the home of a single father and his energetic daughter. It wasn't impressive, it wasn't luxurious, but it was theirs. And it was real, and Daniel had to trust that real was enough. At 5:30, Daniel surveyed their work. The apartment looked better than it had in months. Emma had changed into her second favorite dress, the one without paint stains, and was sitting on the couch with her best stuffed unicorn, too excited to do anything but wait. "Daddy, what if she doesn't like me anymore?" Emma asked suddenly, her earlier enthusiasm cracking to reveal nervousness underneath. Daniel sat beside her, pulling her close. "Why wouldn't she like you?" "Because the beach was special. It was different. Maybe I was only interesting because we were in a special place, and now that we're just at home, I'll be boring." The fear was so adult, so raw, that Daniel's chest ached. "Emma, you could never be boring. You're the most interesting person I know. You're smart and funny and kind, and you see the world in ways most people miss. Claire liked you on the beach because of who you are, not because of where you were." "But what if—" "No what ifs. She's coming to see us because she wants to, because she thinks you're remarkable, which you are, because she wants to be part of our lives, mess and chaos and all." Daniel kissed the top of Emma's head. "And if for some reason it doesn't work out, that's okay too. We're going to be fine either way, you and me. We always are." Emma nodded against his chest, but Daniel could feel her tension. He understood it completely. They were both putting themselves out there, both risking something precious. Emma was risking her heart on someone who might leave. Daniel was risking everything he'd carefully built: stability, safety, the uncomplicated simplicity of their two-person unit. The doorbell rang at exactly 6 o'clock. Emma shot off the couch like she'd been launched, but Daniel caught her hand. "Remember, normal greeting. Not tackling. We talked about this." I know. Be cool, I can be cool." Emma took a deep breath, clearly trying to contain her excitement. Daniel opened the door. Claire stood in the hallway holding a bottle of wine and a wrapped package, looking more nervous than he'd ever seen her. She'd changed from the jeans and sweater into dark slacks and a soft blue blouse, her hair still down but styled now. She looked beautiful, and completely out of place in their building's dingy hallway with its flickering fluorescent lights and faded carpet. "Hi," she said, and her voice was tentative in a way it never was at work. "Hi," Daniel replied, and everything he'd planned to say evaporated from his mind. "You came." Emma burst past Daniel's attempt to maintain composure, grabbing Claire's free hand. "I'm so happy you came. Come in, come in. We cleaned everything, and Daddy made spaghetti, which is one of the 5 things he can cook really well, And I want to show you my room and my art project and my unicorn collection, but Daddy says I have to be cool and not overwhelming, so I'm being cool. Am I being cool? Claire looked down at Emma with an expression that made Daniel's heart twist. Wonder, affection, and something almost like relief. You're being perfect, and I'm very happy to be here. She stepped inside, and Daniel closed the door on the outside world, on professional hierarchies and complicated ethics, on everything except this moment. Claire set the wine and package on the small table by the door and crouched down to Emma's level, just like she had on the beach. "This is for you," she said, handing Emma the wrapped package. "I wasn't sure what you'd like, but your dad mentioned you were interested in art." Emma tore into the wrapping with the efficiency of a child experienced in birthday presents. Inside was a professional watercolor set, the expensive kind with dozens of colors and real brushes. Emma's eyes went huge. "This is amazing! Daddy, look! It has so many colors!" She threw her arms around Claire's neck without warning. "Thank you, thank you, thank you." Claire's arms came up automatically to return the hug, and Daniel saw her eyes close briefly, her expression softening in a way that made him certain he'd done the right thing inviting her here. When Emma pulled back, Claire was smiling, really smiling, without any of her usual careful control. "You're very welcome. Your dad tells me you're quite the artist." "I'm pretty good. Miss Peterson says I have natural talent, which means I'm good without trying super hard. But I still try hard anyway because trying is important." Emma grabbed Claire's hand again. "Come see my room. I cleaned it specially for you." Daniel watched as his daughter dragged Claire down the hallway, chattering nonstop about the various artworks taped to her walls, the organization system for her stuffed animals, the complex rules governing which toys were allowed on her bed. Claire listened with genuine interest, asking questions, offering observations, treating Emma's 7-year-old concerns with the same seriousness she brought to board meetings. He retreated to the kitchen to check on dinner, giving them space but listening to their voices drifting from Emma's room. His hands moved automatically, stirring sauce, checking pasta, setting the table, while his mind tried to process the surreal reality of Claire Monroe in his apartment, in his daughter's room, fitting into their lives like she'd always been there. It was too easy. That's what worried him. It shouldn't be this natural, this right. There should be awkwardness, friction, the inevitable clash of different worlds. But as Claire and Emma emerged from the bedroom, still holding hands, both laughing about something, all Daniel could think was how complete they looked, like pieces of a puzzle he hadn't known was incomplete. "Daddy, Claire says she's never painted with watercolors before. Can you believe it? She's grown up and she's never tried." Emma was scandalized by this revelation. "I told her we have to paint together. I'll teach her. I'm a very good teacher." "I'm sure you are." Daniel gestured to the table. "Dinner's ready, if you're hungry." They sat down to eat, Claire at their small kitchen table that barely fit 3 people, surrounded by Emma's artwork and school papers and all the everyday chaos of their life. Daniel served spaghetti onto mismatched plates while Emma kept up a steady stream of conversation, asking Claire about everything from her favorite color to her opinion on the best type of dinosaur to whether she believed in magic. Claire answered each question seriously, and Daniel noticed how she seemed to relax as the evening progressed. The tension in her shoulders eased. Her responses became less measured, more spontaneous. She laughed at Emma's jokes, asked follow-up questions that showed she was really listening, and when she accidentally got sauce on her blouse, she didn't flinch, just dabbed at it with her napkin and kept eating. "This is really good," Claire said, gesturing at her plate. "You undersold your cooking abilities." "It's spaghetti, not exactly gourmet. It's made with care. That counts for a lot." Claire's eyes met his across the table, and Daniel saw gratitude there, and something deeper. "Everything here is made with care. Your home, the way you talk to Emma, the attention you give to small details. It shows." "Our apartment is tiny," Daniel said, suddenly self-conscious, "and nothing matches, and the furniture is mostly second-hand. It's wonderful," Claire interrupted firmly. "It's a home. A real home where people love each other and show up for each other and don't pretend to be anything they're not. Do you have any idea how rare that is?" Emma nodded sagely. "Daddy always says a home is about people, not stuff. That's why our home is good even though we don't have a lot of money, Because we have love, and that's more expensive than furniture. Your daughter, Claire said to Daniel, is remarkably wise. I believe I've mentioned that before. She gets that from her mother, too. The mention of Sarah created a brief silence, but Emma filled it immediately. Mommy would like you, she announced to Claire. She was really nice, and she always said Daddy needed to find someone who understood him. I think you understand him. Claire's expression softened even further. I'd like to think so. Your dad is pretty easy to understand, actually. He cares about people. He works hard. He shows up. Those are good qualities in a person. The best qualities, Emma agreed. That's why he's the best daddy. Even when he's tired, he still plays with me and helps with homework and makes dinner and does all the things. He never complains. I complain sometimes, Daniel protested. Not real complaining, just pretend complaining when I don't want to clean my room. That's different. Emma took a bite of spaghetti, then looked at Claire with sudden seriousness. Are you going to be Daddy's girlfriend? Daniel nearly choked on his water. Emma! What? I'm just asking. You said I should ask questions when I want to know things. Emma turned back to Claire, completely unabashed. Because if you are, that's okay. I like you, and Daddy likes you, and you're nice and pretty, and you understand about sandcastles. Those are good girlfriend qualities. Claire looked at Daniel, her eyebrows raised in a question. He could see the beginning of a smile playing at her lips, along with something that might have been panic or might have been hope. We haven't exactly... Daniel floundered, trying to find words that were honest but appropriate for his 7-year-old. We're figuring it out, Claire said, rescuing him. Your dad and I like each other very much, but grown-up relationships are complicated, especially when you work together like we do. So we're taking our time, being careful, making sure we do things right. That's smart, Emma said. Daddy always says if you rush things, you make mistakes. Like when I tried to paint before the first layer was dry and everything got muddy. Patience is important. Exactly. We're being patient. Claire reached across the table and took Daniel's hand, the gesture natural and grounding. But yes, Emma, I'd very much like to be your dad's girlfriend, if that's okay with you. Emma's face split into the widest smile Daniel had ever seen. It's super okay. This is the best day ever. Well, second best. The beach was first best because that's when I met you, but this is really close. The rest of dinner passed in a blur of conversation and laughter. Emma told stories about school, demonstrated her impressive knowledge of marine biology, and extracted a promise from Claire to come see her soccer game on Saturday. Claire told carefully edited stories about her own childhood, making Emma laugh with descriptions of her failed attempts at various hobbies and her father's increasingly absurd expectations. Daniel mostly listened, watching the two most important people in his current world connect with such ease it made his chest ache. This was what he'd been missing. Not just romantic connection, but family. The feeling of sitting around a table with people who mattered, sharing food and stories and simple presence. After dinner, Emma insisted on teaching Claire the basics of watercolor painting. They set up at the kitchen table with Emma's new supplies, and Daniel cleaned up while listening to his daughter's patient instructions and Claire's earnest attempts to follow them. No, you have to let the paint spread naturally. You can't control it too much or it looks weird, Emma demonstrated, her small hands confident with the brush. I'm not very good at letting things spread naturally. I prefer control, Claire admitted, frowning at her paper. I know, but sometimes the best art happens when you let go a little bit, like happy accidents. Bob Ross talks about happy accidents all the time. Daddy and I watch him sometimes. Who's Bob Ross? Emma gasped dramatically. You don't know Bob Ross? Daddy, Claire doesn't know Bob Ross. We have to fix this immediately. Before Daniel could respond, Emma had abandoned the painting and was pulling up videos on the tablet, showing Claire clips of the famously calm painter discussing happy little trees and the joy of creation. Claire watched with fascination, and Daniel saw the moment when she really understood what Emma was trying to teach her. That perfection wasn't the goal, that mistakes could become features, that sometimes the best results came from surrendering control. He's very zen, Claire observed. I don't know what zen means, but he's really nice and his paintings are pretty, and he makes me feel calm when I'm worried about stuff. Emma returned to her own painting. Try again, but this time don't worry so much about making it perfect. Just let it be what it wants to be. Claire tried again, her brush strokes looser, less controlled. The result was better, still not technically perfect, but with the organic quality that the first attempt had lacked. She stared at it for a long moment, then looked at Emma with something like revelation in her eyes. "You just taught me something very important," she said quietly. "About painting. About everything." They painted for another hour, Emma narrating constantly while Claire grew more comfortable with the medium, with letting go, with accepting that imperfection could be beautiful. Daniel finished the dishes and then just watched, committing the scene to memory. His daughter and the woman he was falling for, heads bent together over watercolor papers, both completely absorbed in creation. When Emma's yawns became too frequent to ignore, Daniel announced bedtime. Emma protested, but her heart wasn't in it. She was exhausted from excitement and the late evening. "Will you come back?" Emma asked Claire, her eyes already drooping. "You can teach me about work stuff, and I'll teach you more about painting. That's fair." "That's very fair. I'd like that." Claire stood, and Emma immediately hugged her again. "I'm really glad Daddy likes you. You make him smile real smiles." "He makes me smile real smiles too," Claire said, her voice thick with emotion. Daniel carried a half-asleep Emma to her room, helped her into pajamas, and tucked her into bed. She was asleep before he finished the first page of her bedtime story, exhausted by the emotional intensity of the evening. He kissed her forehead and returned to find Claire standing by the living room window, looking out at the city lights. "Thank you for tonight," she said without turning, "for inviting me, for letting me into your life like this, for your daughter, who is absolutely remarkable and made me feel more welcome in 2 hours than most people manage in years." Daniel crossed the room to stand behind her, close enough to feel her warmth, but not quite touching. "Thank you for coming, for being patient with Emma's million questions, for painting watercolors at my kitchen table instead of being somewhere fancy where people at your level usually spend their evenings. People at my level usually spend their evenings alone in expensive apartments, drinking expensive wine, wondering why success feels so hollow." Claire turned to face him. Tonight, this is what I've been missing. This is what matters. I just forgot for a while." "You didn't forget. You just got lost in the wrong priorities. It happens." Daniel reached up to tuck a strand of hair behind her ear, the gesture tender and natural. "But you found your way back." "Emma found me. On a beach, in the most mortifying moment of my life, your daughter saw something in me worth saving. And then you," her voice broke slightly, "you kept seeing it too, even when I tried to hide behind professionalism and distance. You both kept insisting I was better than I thought I was. Because you are. You've always been. You just needed someone to remind you." Claire kissed him then, properly this time, without the desperation of the afternoon or the tentative promise of earlier. This kiss was different, deeper, more certain, weighted with everything they'd both been afraid to hope for. Daniel's arms came around her waist, pulling her closer, and for a moment the world narrowed to just this: the feeling of her against him, the taste of her lips, the rightness of holding someone who understood his life's complications and chose him anyway. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, Claire rested her forehead against his. "We still have to figure out the work situation," she said. "The ethics policies, the potential conflicts of interest, how to maintain professionalism when we're whatever we are now. We will. Carefully, transparently. I'll talk to HR, declare the relationship, request reassignment if necessary. We'll do everything by the book." Daniel's hands traced slow patterns on her back. "But that's tomorrow's problem. Tonight, can we just be two people who like each other? No complications? No protocols? Just us?" "Just us," Claire agreed. "I like the sound of that." They moved to the couch, and Claire curled into Daniel's side like she'd been doing it for years. They talked about everything and nothing: her fears about the board, his concerns about balancing work and single parenthood, their shared love of old movies, their mutual terrible cooking skills beyond pasta dishes. The conversation flowed easily, naturally, without any of the careful measurement that usually characterized their interactions. Around midnight, Claire reluctantly said she should go. Daniel walked her to the door, neither of them quite ready to end the evening. Emma's soccer game is Saturday at 10, Daniel said. If you're serious about coming. I'm serious about everything involving you two. Which is terrifying, by the way. I'm not used to being serious about personal things. Claire grabbed her purse, then paused. Daniel, I need you to understand something. I'm going to mess this up, probably multiple times. I'm going to get too focused on work and forget to call. I'm going to struggle with vulnerability. I'm going to try to control things that can't be controlled. I'm going to be difficult. I'm going to be exhausted and distracted by Emma's needs and sometimes resentful of how easy your life looks compared to mine. I'm going to be insecure about the income gap between us. I'm going to worry constantly that I'm not enough, not successful enough, not sophisticated enough, not interesting enough to keep your attention. Daniel took her hands. We're both going to mess this up, but maybe we can mess it up together and figure out how to fix it as we go. Together. I like that word. I haven't had it together in a very long time. Neither have I. We're both out of practice. We'll stumble through it. Claire kissed him once more, soft and sweet and full of promise. I'll see you Saturday, 10 o'clock. Soccer game. I'll be the overdressed woman who knows nothing about youth sports. You'll be perfect. Emma doesn't care what you wear. She just cares that you're there. What about you? What do you care about? Daniel smiled. Same thing. Just that you're there. After Claire left, Daniel checked on Emma, still sleeping peacefully, her new watercolor set on her nightstand, and then stood in his quiet apartment, trying to process everything that had shifted in one evening. The careful boundaries he'd maintained for 3 years had dissolved in hours. The life he'd carefully controlled had opened up to possibilities both thrilling and terrifying. He thought about Sarah, about what she'd want for him. She'd want him happy. He knew that. She'd want Emma to have people in her life who loved her. She'd want him to stop surviving and start living. She'd probably laugh at how long it took him to figure that out. Daniel picked up one of the watercolor paintings from the kitchen table. Claire's second attempt, the one where she'd finally let go of control. It was messy and imperfect and absolutely beautiful in its honest imperfection. He set it on the refrigerator next to Emma's artwork, a reminder that sometimes the best things happened when you stop trying so hard to be perfect. Saturday was 2 days away. 2 days until Claire came to Emma's soccer game, until their private understanding became something public, until the careful separation between his personal and professional life collapsed completely. 2 days to prepare, to worry, to second guess. Or 2 days to simply be grateful that he'd found someone who made him want to be brave. Someone who looked at his complicated, messy, imperfect life and chose it anyway. Someone who'd learned about happy accidents and letting go from a 7-year-old girl with too many opinions and exactly the right amount of wisdom. Daniel turned off the lights and went to bed. And for the first time in 3 years, he fell asleep smiling, thinking not about what he'd lost, but about what he might be building. Something lumpy and imperfect and absolutely worth the risk. Saturday morning arrived with the kind of perfect weather that felt like the universe's approval. Clear skies, gentle breeze, temperatures warm enough for shorts, but cool enough that Emma wouldn't overheat during her game. Daniel had barely slept, his mind cycling through scenarios ranging from wonderful to catastrophic. But Emma's excitement was infectious enough to push most of his anxiety aside. "Do you think she'll really come?" Emma asked for the 15th time as Daniel helped her into her soccer uniform. "She said she would. Claire doesn't say things she doesn't mean. But what if something important happens at work? What if her dad calls and she has to go do boss things?" Emma's worry was visible in the way she clutched her shin guards. Daniel knelt down to help her with her cleats, meeting her eyes directly. "Then she'll call and explain, and we'll understand. But I don't think that's going to happen. I think she's going to be here cheering for you, exactly like she promised." "Okay." Emma took a deep breath, visibly steadying herself. "Okay. I believe you." They arrived at the field 30 minutes early, as usual. Emma joined her teammates for warm-ups while Daniel set up their small folding chairs on the sideline. He tried not to scan the parking lot constantly, tried not to check his phone every 2 minutes, tried to focus on watching Emma practice her footwork with the other kids. At 5 minutes to 10, a sleek black car pulled into the lot. Claire emerged wearing jeans, sneakers, and a simple t-shirt. The most casual Daniel had ever seen her. She'd pulled her hair back in a ponytail and was wearing sunglasses, looking nothing like the intimidating vice president who commanded boardrooms. She looked young and nervous and absolutely beautiful. Emma spotted her immediately and waved so enthusiastically she nearly fell over. Claire waved back, her smile visible even from across the field, and made her way over to where Daniel stood. "You came," he said, and hated how relieved he sounded. "Of course I came, I promised." Claire glanced around at the other parents setting up chairs, at the kids warming up, at the completely normal Saturday morning youth soccer scene. "I've never been to one of these before. What's the protocol?" "Cheer when your kid does something good. Commiserate when they don't. Avoid being the parent who yells at the referee." Daniel handed her a folding chair. "And pretend the coffee from that concession stand is drinkable." "I can handle that." Claire sat beside him, close enough that their shoulders touched. "How's Emma feeling?" "Nervous, excited, worried you wouldn't come. She's been asking about you all morning." "I'm sorry I made her worry. I should have texted or—" "Claire," Daniel took her hand, not caring who might see. "You're here. That's what matters." The game started, and Daniel watched Claire watch Emma. She leaned forward in her seat whenever Emma touched the ball, gasped when another player nearly stole it, cheered when Emma made a successful pass. She asked questions about the rules, about positions, about strategy, engaging with the game in the same focused way she approached everything. "She's good," Claire observed during a break in play. "Really good. Look at how she reads the field, anticipates where the ball will go. That's not just natural talent. She's thinking strategically." "She gets that from me," Daniel said proudly. "The thinking part, anyway, not the athletic part." That was all Sarah. At halftime, Emma ran over, sweaty and glowing with exertion. "Did you see my assist? Did you see it?" "I saw it. That was brilliant." Claire's enthusiasm was genuine, unguarded. "The way you passed to your teammate instead of trying to score yourself, that was smart thinking." Coach says soccer is about the team, not individual glory. Working together makes us stronger. Emma gulped water from her bottle. "Are you having fun? Is it boring?" "Not even a little bit boring. I'm completely invested in your team's victory now." "We're the Tigers. We're pretty good. Not the best in the league, but solid." Emma said this with the serious assessment of a professional analyst. "I think we can win today if we tighten up our defense and capitalize on their weak left side." Claire looked at Daniel with raised eyebrows. "She really does get the strategic thinking from you." "Told you." The second half was tighter, more competitive. Emma's team was down by 1 goal with 5 minutes left when Emma got the ball near midfield. Daniel watched his daughter assess the situation, saw the moment she made her decision, and held his breath as she sent a perfect through ball to her teammate, who was making a run toward the goal. The teammate received it cleanly and scored, tying the game. Claire was on her feet, cheering, completely unself-conscious. Other parents turned to look at her, this striking woman they didn't recognize, celebrating with pure joy, and Daniel saw a few curious glances, some whispered conversations. He didn't care. Let them wonder. Let them talk. Claire was here because she chose to be, because she cared about Emma, because she was becoming part of their lives in ways that mattered more than gossip or speculation. The game ended in a tie, which Emma's team treated as a moral victory given their opponent's higher ranking. Emma ran over after shaking hands with the other team, launching herself at Claire with zero regard for being sweaty and grass-stained. "Did you see? Did you see the pass? Coach says it was perfect. He says I have excellent field vision." Claire caught her easily, not even flinching at the dirt transferring to her clean clothes. "I saw. It was incredible. You made that goal happen." "We made it happen. The whole team. That's what makes it good." Emma pulled back, suddenly serious. "I'm really glad you came. Like, really, really glad." "Me too, sweetheart." The endearment came naturally, and Daniel saw Emma's face light up at it. "Me too." They got ice cream after the game, Daniel's tradition after every Saturday match, win or lose. The three of them sat at a picnic table outside the local ice cream shop, Emma chattering about the game while working on a cone that was slowly melting faster than she could eat it. Claire listened attentively, asked good questions, and didn't seem to notice or care when Emma accidentally dripped chocolate ice cream on her hand. "I have to be honest," Claire said during a brief pause in Emma's narrative. I had no idea children's soccer could be that engaging. I was genuinely stressed during that last 5 minutes. Wait until you see a game where they're actually losing, Daniel said. Then you'll understand true parental anxiety. I look forward to it. Weirdly, Claire smiled at him over Emma's head. I look forward to all of it. Later, after they dropped Emma off at her friend's house for a promised play date, Daniel and Claire drove back to his apartment. The car felt different with just the two of them, more intimate, charged with possibility and the weight of things unsaid. "Come up?" Daniel asked when they reached his building. "We should probably talk. About work. About us. About how this is actually going to function in the real world." "I know." Claire killed the engine. "I've been avoiding thinking about it too hard because it makes my head hurt. But yes, we should talk." They settled on his couch with coffee, and for a long moment neither spoke. Finally, Claire broke the silence. "I met with HR yesterday, disclosed our relationship, requested guidance on proper protocols." She held up a hand when Daniel started to speak. "I didn't tell you beforehand because I wanted to handle it myself, make sure I was doing everything correctly before involving you." And it's complicated but manageable. The main issue is the direct reporting structure. You can't report to me anymore. That's a clear conflict of interest. So I recommended you be reassigned to Margaret's team permanently. Your salary and position remain unchanged. The Riverside project continues under my oversight, but Margaret will handle your performance reviews and day-to-day management. Claire's voice was steady, professional, but Daniel could see tension in her shoulders. It's not ideal, but it maintains both propriety and your career trajectory. Daniel absorbed this. Being removed from Claire's direct supervision made sense, protected them both, but it also meant losing the daily interaction they'd built, the Monday, Wednesday, Friday meetings that had become the highlight of his week. "You're okay with this?" he asked. "I'm not okay with it. I hate it, actually. I hate that we have to restructure your work life because we want to be together. I hate that office politics and ethics policies get a vote in our personal decisions. I hate that being with me complicates your career." Claire set down her coffee with more force than necessary. "But I also refuse to jeopardize your professional standing or make you vulnerable to accusations of favoritism or advancement through personal connections. So yes, I'm okay with it because it's the right thing to do, even though it's not what I want." "What do you want?" "I want to work with you every day and come home to you every night. I want to maintain professionalism at the office and authenticity everywhere else. I want Emma to keep looking at me like I'm someone worth keeping around. I want your life and mine to blend instead of collide." Claire's voice softened. "I want things that are probably unrealistic, but I want them anyway." Daniel moved closer, taking her hands. "None of that's unrealistic. Difficult, maybe, requiring compromise and patience and probably some awkward conversations, but not unrealistic. There's more." Claire took a breath. "My father. He's not going to accept this gracefully. When he finds out I'm dating an employee, former direct report, but still, he's going to see it as proof that I've lost my judgment, that I'm letting personal feelings compromise professional integrity. He'll use it against me with the board." "Then we don't tell him. Not yet." "He'll find out. People talk. Office relationships don't stay secret, especially when one person is an executive. Margaret already knows. HR knows. How long before someone mentions it in a meeting or at a company event?" Claire's grip on his hands tightened. "I'm not afraid of my father's disapproval, Daniel. I'm afraid of him using us to hurt you, to suggest your work isn't good enough, that you've been coasting on personal connections, that you're some kind of opportunist." "Let him try. My work speaks for itself. I've got 3 years of excellent performance reviews that have nothing to do with you." Daniel's voice was firm. "And if he comes at me, I'll handle it. I'm not some fragile thing that needs protecting, Claire." "I know, but—" "No buts. We're not making decisions based on your father's potential reactions. We're making them based on what's right for us, for Emma, for our lives. If that pisses him off, that's his problem to manage, not ours." Claire stared at him for a long moment. Then something in her expression shifted, released. "You're right. You're absolutely right. I've spent so much of my life trying to anticipate his objections, trying to be beyond reproach so he couldn't criticize me. But I can't live like that anymore." "No, you can't. Neither of us can." Daniel pulled her closer. We move forward. Carefully, honestly, but forward. We let HR handle the professional protocols. We let your father have his opinions without letting them control our choices. We build something real and let it be messy and imperfect. And ours. Lumpy instead of perfect. Exactly. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, the weight of difficult conversations lifting. Outside, the sounds of the city filtered through the windows, cars passing, neighbors talking, the normal soundtrack of a Saturday afternoon. Inside, something precious was taking shape, something neither of them had expected to find, but both desperately needed. I should tell you something, Claire said quietly, about why this us matters so much to me. Daniel waited, sensing the importance of whatever she was about to share. After my mother died, my father threw himself completely into work. I was 16. He barely looked at me for 2 years. When he did, it was to critique my grades, my choices, my failure to live up to his expectations. I learned that love was conditional, that I was only worth his attention if I was achieving, succeeding, being perfect. Claire's voice was steady, but her eyes were bright. I've spent my entire adult life trying to earn unconditional acceptance, trying to be so good, so successful, so beyond criticism that someone would look at me and say, "You're enough exactly as you are." Claire, but no one ever did. Every relationship I've had has been transactional in some way. People wanted access to my connections, my status, my money. They liked the version of me I performed for them. No one wanted the real me. The me who gets anxious about stupid things and cries at commercials and has no idea how to cook anything beyond toast. She turned to look at him directly. And then I met Emma, who decided I was nice based on nothing more than a conversation about sandcastles. And I met you, who sees me fail at watercolors and manages to look at me like I'm remarkable anyway. And for the first time in my life, I feel like maybe I'm enough without having to earn it. Daniel felt his throat tighten. You've always been enough. Your father's too blind to see it. But that's his loss, not your failure. I'm starting to believe that. Because of you. Because of Emma. Claire's smile was tremulous. Because of mac and cheese dinners and soccer games and conversations about lumpy being better than perfect. Emma's a very wise philosopher. She really is. Claire leaned her head on Daniel's shoulder. I'm terrified of screwing this up, of letting you both down, of proving my father right about me making poor decisions. You're not going to screw it up, and even if things get hard, which they will, we'll figure it out together. That's what people who care about each other do. They stayed like that for a long time, wrapped in each other's presence, until Daniel's phone buzzed with a text from Emma's friend's mother saying the playdate was wrapping up. Reality intruded, as it always did, with reminders of schedules and responsibilities and the logistics of life. I should go, Claire said, but she didn't move. Or you could stay. We could pick up Emma together, maybe get dinner. Keep pretending for a few more hours that complicated doesn't exist. That sounds perfect. The next 3 months unfolded in a series of adjustments, negotiations, and small victories. Daniel's reassignment to Margaret's team went smoothly. Margaret was professional and supportive, making it clear that she respected both Daniel's work and his relationship with Claire. The office gossip lasted about 2 weeks before being replaced by newer, more interesting dramas. A few people made snide comments. A few more looked at Daniel with new skepticism, as if his achievements were suddenly questionable. He ignored them, let his work continue speaking for itself, and focused on what mattered. Claire faced her own challenges. Robert Monroe's disapproval manifested in increasingly aggressive questioning of her decisions during board meetings. Subtle undermining of her authority pointed comments about emotional compromises. Claire held her ground, backed by strong performance data and the support of board members who recognized her value beyond her father's biased assessment. The confrontation finally came at a company event 3 months after that first soccer game. Daniel had been reluctant to attend, a formal charity gala where he'd be obviously out of place among executives and major donors. But Claire had asked him to come, said she wanted him there, and he'd agreed despite his misgivings. Emma stayed with her best friend's family for the evening, disappointed to miss getting dressed up, but philosophical about it. Sometimes grown-ups have to do boring stuff, she'd told Daniel with the weary acceptance of a sage. Just don't stay out too late. You get grumpy when you're tired. The gala was exactly as uncomfortable as Daniel had feared. He'd rented a suit he couldn't really afford, stood in a ballroom full of people who could buy and sell his apartment building without blinking, and tried not to feel like an imposter. Claire navigated the room with practiced grace, introducing him to colleagues and donors with zero trace of embarrassment or apology. She held his hand openly, claimed him as hers without hesitation, and Daniel felt some of his discomfort ease. Then Robert Monroe arrived. Daniel had seen photos, had heard stories, but meeting Claire's father in person was still jarring. He was tall, commanding, with Claire's same sharp features but hardened by years of ruthless ambition. His eyes found Daniel immediately, assessed him with cold calculation, and dismissed him in seconds. Then he turned to his daughter. "Claire, I need a word." "Not now, Dad. I'm with Daniel." "That's exactly what we need to discuss, privately." Robert's voice carried authority that expected automatic obedience. "Anything you need to say to me, you can say in front of Daniel." Claire's hand tightened on Daniel's. Robert's expression hardened. "Fine. If you want to have this conversation publicly, we will. This relationship is inappropriate. You're an executive dating a subordinate." "Former subordinate," Claire interrupted. "Daniel reports to Margaret Chen now. All proper protocols have been followed." "Protocols?" Robert's laugh was harsh. "You think following HR guidelines makes this acceptable? You're making a fool of yourself, Claire. Dating a single father who makes a fraction of your salary, who has no connections, no prospects beyond the middle management position you've given him. People are talking. They're questioning your judgment." "Let them talk." Claire's voice was ice. "My judgment is sound. My performance is excellent. The company is thriving under my leadership. Who I date in my personal time is none of your concern." "Everything you do is my concern. You're a Monroe. Your decisions reflect on this family, on this company. I didn't build Monroe and Associates so my daughter could throw it away for some—" "Careful." Daniel's voice cut through the tension, quiet but firm. "Be very careful what you say next." Robert turned to him with contempt. "You don't get to speak. You're the problem here. Taking advantage of your position, using my daughter. I'm not using anyone. I work hard, I do my job well, and I care about Claire. That's all you need to know. You think you're good enough for her? You're nobody. A low-level analyst with a child and no future. Claire deserves better." "You're right," Daniel said, and saw a surprise flicker across both Monroe's faces. "Claire deserves better. She deserves a father who supports her instead of undermining her. She deserves family who sees her value beyond quarterly profits. She deserves people who love her for who she is, not what she achieves." He stepped closer to Robert, refusing to be intimidated. "I may not have your money or connections. I may just be a middle-class single father trying to do right by my daughter. But I see Claire, the real her. And I think she's remarkable exactly as she is. Brilliant, kind, stronger than she knows. So yes, she deserves better. But not better than me. Better than you." The silence that followed was absolute. People around them had stopped talking, turning to watch the confrontation. Claire was staring at Daniel with something like awe. Robert's face had gone red with fury. "You have no idea what you're talking about." "I know exactly what I'm talking about. I know what it's like to love someone unconditionally, to support them without requiring perfection, to show up day after day, even when it's hard." Daniel's voice was steady. "I do that for my daughter. I'm learning to do it for Claire. The question is, can you?" Robert looked at his daughter, then back at Daniel. For a moment, something shifted in his expression, recognition, maybe, or regret. Then the walls came back up, and he turned away. "This conversation isn't over," he said to Claire. "Yes, it is," Claire's voice was firm. "I love you, Dad, but I'm done trying to earn your approval. I'm done making decisions based on your expectations instead of my own values. I'm done pretending that success without happiness is enough." She took Daniel's hand. "I'm choosing my own life. With Daniel. With Emma. With people who actually want me in their lives instead of just wanting me to perform for them." Robert walked away without another word. People resumed their conversations with forced casualness, pretending they hadn't just witnessed a family drama, but the damage was done. Or rather, the healing was begun. Claire was shaking. Daniel pulled her closer, not caring about propriety or professional appearance. "You okay?" I just told my father to basically fuck off in front of half the board of directors. Claire's laugh was slightly hysterical. That was either the bravest or stupidest thing I've ever done. Definitely bravest. I might have just destroyed my career. You just saved your life. There's a difference. They left the gala early, neither of them in the mood for more networking and forced conversation. In the car, Claire finally let herself cry. Huge, gasping sobs that seemed to come from somewhere deep and long suppressed. Daniel held her, let her release years of hurt and anger and disappointment, didn't try to fix anything or make it better, just stayed present. He's never going to accept this, Claire said when she could finally speak. Us. He's never going to look at you as anything but the man who corrupted his daughter's judgment. I know, but you're not choosing between him and me. You're choosing between his version of your life and your own version. That's different. It doesn't feel different right now. Right now it feels like I'm losing my father. You're not losing him. You're setting boundaries. If he can't respect them, that's his choice, not your loss. Daniel brushed tears from her cheeks. And you're not alone in this. You have me. You have Emma, who's already planning what to call you because Ms. Monroe is too formal and Claire doesn't feel special enough. You have a life that's yours, messy and imperfect and real. Claire kissed him then, desperate and grateful and full of everything they'd both been too afraid to hope for. When they pulled apart, she was smiling through her tears. What's Emma planning to call me? Last I heard, she was debating between Bonus Mom and Claire Mom. She's very concerned about accuracy and feelings. That child is going to rule the world someday. Probably. We should be nice to her now so she remembers us fondly. They drove to pick up Emma, who took one look at Claire's tear-stained face and immediately launched into an explanation of the elaborate craft project she'd made. Emma's innocent chatter filled the car, requiring no response beyond occasional appreciative sounds, giving Claire space to compose herself without feeling pressured to explain. When they reached Daniel's apartment, Emma went straight to her room to retrieve the craft project for proper viewing. Claire and Daniel stood in the kitchen, and the domesticity of the moment, the normal, everyday quality of it, felt like coming home. I want this, Claire said quietly, not just sometimes, not just when it's convenient. I want this life. With you. With Emma. In this apartment that's too small and has mismatched furniture and feels more like home than anywhere I've ever lived. My lease is up in 3 months, Daniel said. We could find somewhere bigger, together, if that's what you want. Is that what you want? Daniel thought about Emma's question months ago, about whether he let himself be happy. He thought about Sarah, about what she'd want for him. He thought about the man he'd been, careful, controlled, just surviving, and the man he was becoming. Someone brave enough to risk, to hope, to build instead of just protect. Yes, he said simply. That's exactly what I want. The months that followed were not without challenges. Robert Monroe continued his campaign against Claire's decisions, though with less vehemence after she proved, repeatedly, that her judgment was sound and her leadership effective. Some board members took his side. Others supported Claire. The company thrived regardless, buoyed by policies that treated people as people and by leadership that understood balance wasn't weakness. Daniel and Claire found a new apartment together, bigger than his old place, more modest than her previous one, perfect for their blended family. Emma got her own room and immediately covered the walls with artwork. Claire set up a home office and learned, slowly, to leave work at work. Daniel discovered that having a partner to share the load meant he could breathe deeper, laugh easier, be more than just dad, without guilt. Emma thrived with 2 adults who loved her unconditionally. She taught Claire to bake, with mixed but enthusiastic results. She helped Daniel understand that sometimes control meant knowing when to let go. She continued being wise beyond her years and occasionally exhausting in her energy, and both adults agreed she was the best thing in their lives. The board meeting where Robert Monroe finally acknowledged Claire's success came almost a year after that first beach encounter. He didn't apologize. That would have required vulnerability he wasn't capable of. But he publicly recognized the company's improved performance under her leadership, admitted that her policies had exceeded his projections, and stepped back from his campaign of opposition. It wasn't reconciliation, but it was peace of a sort. Claire cried when she told Daniel about it later. Not from joy exactly, but from relief. From the release of a weight she'd carried her entire life. From the realization that she'd survived losing his approval and was better for it. "You were right," she said. "I didn't need his acceptance. I just needed to accept myself." "Look at you learning things," Daniel teased gently. "I have excellent teachers, a wise 7-year-old and her remarkably patient father. 8-year-old now. She had a birthday last month, remember? 8-year-old. Right. The one who's currently attempting to teach me advanced mathematics even though I have an MBA. Emma was indeed in the next room, explaining her homework with the confidence of someone who believed adults needed constant education. Her voice carried through the apartment, their apartment, mixing with the sounds of dinner cooking and music playing and life happening in all its chaotic, beautiful normalcy. Daniel pulled Claire close, feeling her heart beat against his chest, feeling the solid reality of their life together. It wasn't perfect. It was complicated and sometimes messy, and required constant negotiation between different needs and schedules and expectations. But it was theirs, built not by careful planning, but by courage, by moments of vulnerability, by choosing authenticity over appearance. It was lumpy and imperfect and absolutely right. A year and a half after that mortifying moment on the beach, Daniel and Claire returned to the same stretch of sand. Emma had requested it specifically, wanted to see if their original sandcastle had left any trace, wanted to recreate the moment that had changed everything. The castle was long gone, of course, reclaimed by tide and time. But they built a new one together, all three of them, Emma directing operations while Claire and Daniel provided labor and comic relief. When they finished, Emma insisted on taking another photo, all of them together beside their creation. "This one's even better than the first one," Emma declared, examining the castle critically. "Because we planned it together and we all know what we're doing now. That's called growth." "Where did you learn that word?" Claire asked. "My therapist. She says growth is when you learn from experiences and become better. We've all grown." Emma said this with perfect seriousness, then immediately pivoted. "Can we get ice cream? Building castles is hard work." They walked along the beach together, Emma running ahead to examine shells and seaweed, Claire and Daniel following hand in hand. The wind was gentle today. No dramatic gusts to create mortifying moments. Just steady breeze and sunshine and the sound of Emma's laughter mixing with the waves. "Do you ever think about that day?" Claire asked. "About how we almost let embarrassment keep us from this?" "All the time. How close I came to running away. How close you came to pretending we'd never met." Daniel squeezed her hand. "How lucky we both are that Emma exists and has no sense of appropriate boundaries." "Lucky indeed," Claire smiled. "Should we tell her someday? About the whole story, the mortifying beginning?" "Maybe when she's older. Much older, like 30. Deal." They reached the ice cream shop, different from the one near Emma's soccer field, but serving the same purpose. Emma got chocolate again, still eating it too slowly to prevent melting. Claire got vanilla, simple and safe. Daniel got strawberry, adventurous only in dessert choices. They sat at a weathered picnic table watching the ocean, and Daniel thought about the journey from that first Saturday to this one, about fear transformed into courage, about loneliness dissolved by connection, about the difference between surviving and living. "Hey," Emma said suddenly, ice cream forgotten. "Remember what you said on the first beach day? About lumpy being better than perfect?" "I remember," Claire said. "That changed my entire perspective on life." "Well, I've been thinking about it, and I've decided something important." Emma paused dramatically. "Our family is the lumpiest, most imperfect family ever, and that makes it the absolute best." Claire's eyes filled with tears. "You're right, sweetheart. It absolutely does." "Obviously I'm right. I'm very wise." Emma returned to her ice cream with satisfaction. "Miss Peterson says I should be a philosopher when I grow up, or a soccer player, or maybe both." "Why not both?" Daniel said. "Philosopher, soccer player. That's a solid career path." "That's what I said." They stayed on the beach until the sun began setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink and purple. Emma had fallen asleep in the car on the drive home, exhausted by sun and swimming and the kind of perfect day that felt like it should be bottled and saved. Claire carried her inside while Daniel grabbed their beach gear, both of them moving with the practiced coordination of parents who'd learned to function as a team. After tucking Emma into bed, they collapsed on their couch, the new one they'd picked out together, big enough for all three of them to fit comfortably. Claire's head rested on Daniel's shoulder, his arm around her waist, both of them tired in the best possible way. "I love you," Claire said quietly. "I don't think I say it enough, but I love you, both of you. This life we've built. Every messy, complicated, perfect in its imperfection part of it." "I love you too," Daniel replied, "more than I thought was possible after Sarah. I thought that part of me was done, that I'd used up my capacity for this kind of love. But you proved me wrong." Emma proved us both wrong, about a lot of things. She really did. They sat in comfortable silence, the kind that only comes from deep familiarity, from knowing someone well enough that words become optional. Outside, the city moved through its Saturday evening rhythms. Inside, their small family existed in its own protected space, built on foundation of honesty and vulnerability and choosing each other every single day. The story that began with a gust of wind and mortification had become something neither could have predicted. Not a fairy tale. Those were too simple, too divorced from reality. But something real and sustainable and worth every risk they'd taken to get here. Claire shifted to look at Daniel directly. "Do you remember what you said to me that day in my apartment, when I was falling apart after the board meeting? I said a lot of things that day. You said Lumpy was better than perfect because perfection doesn't exist, and trying to achieve it was making us both miserable. You said we could be brave together." Claire's smile was soft. "You were right. Being brave together is so much better than being perfect alone. Look at us, learning and growing. Emma would be proud." "Emma's already proud. She told me last week I'd really improved as a person since we met. Apparently I'm way less scary now." Daniel laughed. High praise from an 8-year-old. "The highest." Time passed in that peculiar way it does when you're exactly where you're supposed to be, simultaneously eternal and gone in an instant. The sun finished setting. The apartment grew dark except for the soft glow of city lights through the windows. Emma's gentle breathing drifted from her room, the soundtrack of childhood and safety and home. Eventually, they went to bed, not because they had to, but because tomorrow would come with its own demands and joys, and they wanted to be ready for it, together. As Daniel drifted towards sleep, Claire's warmth beside him, the ghost of Emma's laughter still echoing in his mind, he thought about the question his daughter had asked so many months ago. Why couldn't bosses and workers be friends? Why were the rules the way they were? The answer, he'd learned, was both simpler and more complex than he'd imagined. The rules existed to protect people from exploitation, from abuse of power, from all the ways relationships could go wrong when complicated by hierarchy and influence. Those protections mattered. They were important. But the rules also assumed the worst of people, assumed that power corrupted inevitably, that connection across professional lines was inherently suspect. They didn't account for the possibility of people choosing honesty, transparency, accountability, of people being brave enough to navigate complexity with integrity. Sometimes the rules needed changing. Sometimes they needed careful following. And sometimes, the hardest thing, you needed wisdom to know the difference. Daniel had found that wisdom in unlikely places. In a 7-year-old's philosophical observations about sandcastles, in a woman's courage to choose vulnerability over perfection, in his own willingness to risk stability for the possibility of something more. They'd all grown, learned, become better versions of themselves through the simple act of showing up honestly for each other. It wasn't a perfect ending. There would be more challenges ahead. Robert Monroe's grudging tolerance could easily shift back to opposition. Office politics would continue requiring navigation. Emma would grow up and present new complications. Life would throw curveballs because life always did. But they'd face it together. Lumpy, imperfect, absolutely committed to figuring it out as they went. And really, what more could anyone ask for? Outside their window, the city hummed with millions of stories unfolding simultaneously. Inside this one small apartment, 3 people who'd found each other through chance and courage, and one very unfortunate gust of wind were building something that would last. Not because it was perfect, but because it was real. And real, they'd learned, was always better. Always.